let's talk about the New York Giants and the absolute pristine
Oh,
franchise that the New York Giants are.
lots of fun. Who doesn't love the Giants, man? I mean, just America's team.
America's team, man. I mean,
All right.
perfect.
I'm going to start off with wins range because it just segues so beautifully here. America's team is going to get 4 to 8 wins this year. Do you see it any
Oh,
differently?
I think you're being incredibly optimistic with 8.
Okay.
I would say 3 to 6. Um, and it starts with the position that we start out with usually when we do these
Right.
previews is the quarterback position. And
Yes.
it's really so here's the baffling thing. I'll let you have you get first dibs on the roster here, but the outstanding thing is you look at the roster on paper and it doesn't look like a 3 to 6 win team. It really, to me, it doesn't. The
Right.
roster is really not that bad. It's pretty decent. I'm not going to say it's good. I'm not going to say it's top half of the league or anything like that, but it's serviceable. It's decent at most positions. E- Even good to great at other positions.
Hmm.
It's just the entirety of it, specifically at the quarterback position, the coaching staff, the front office. I mean, it's all just. And Dable's not a bad guy. I don't think Mara is necessarily a bad owner. Joe Shane, I don't know that he's a necessarily a bad GM. He just was on Hard Knocks at the wrong time. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know that any of these guys individually are bad at what they do. It's just together, it's not the right mix. And I don't know who thought it was the right mix, but it's just not there. But Ben roster.
I like their direction. If you look at this roster versus 2 years ago, I like this a lot better,
Yes.
better than 3 or 4 years ago. But I just don't know if it's going to happen fast enough in this division to save everybody's jobs. So let's stick on the quarterback. So you've got Russell Wilson, who I assume will be the starter. Jameis Winston, who will probably get playing time at some point this year. It just seems to be the way it works.
Yep.
And then you've got the rookie Jackson Dart, who of course they went up to get there in the draft this year. Um, Ideally, and let's not deal in fairy tales, but ideally, the Giants are competitive every week this year. They collect 6 or 7 wins, and Jackson Dart gets in there late in the season and shows enough promise to where you feel good heading into next year. I mean, that would be a nice setup. I think that would save everybody's jobs and give the fans some hope for next year. I think that would be the ideal. That's a lot, though. You're asking this quarterback room to produce something. The offense is where I'm really worried about. The defense I think is going to be okay. The offense, I don't think they're going to be dreadful at all. But you just put it all together here on offense, and I'm a little concerned that there are going to be some weeks where they're going to get tapped out by some good defenses, and that might be 14 to 17 points when they're playing a good defense. Now, when they're going up against an average defense or bad, I think they can probably crank it on up 24, 25, 30 points, but I just do think we're going to see those highs and lows out of the team this year. And so that, to me, that's a problem. But just looking at the quarterback room, it's okay. You got two veterans in here, should allow them to compete one week to the next, and then Jackson Dart for hope in the future. That's kind of where I'm at in the quarterback room, though.
So if we're just talking quarterbacks right now, the ideal scenario is the following. You trade Russell Wilson back to Pittsburgh or to Cleveland and get somebody, whether it's Shador, Dylan Gabriel, whoever the odd man out is, Kenny Pickett, you trade Russell Wilson. Let me preface this. Okay. Russell Wilson, I don't believe still at this point in his career is a bad quarterback.
Right. Yes.
I don't believe Jameis Winston is a starting level quarterback. I never
Right.
really did. I didn't believe him when he was coming out of college, but regardless, at this point in his career, he's not a starting quarterback. Hasn't been for a few years. Russell Wilson, I still believe is. He's just not a very good one. Okay. Um, the ideal scenario here is that Jackson Dart starts by like week 5. Um, I'm looking at their schedule right now, which I don't want to dive too deep in there, but they got Washington, Dallas, Kansas City, LA. Let Russell Wilson take that. Like let him get beat up, let him make all the mistakes. You'd be lucky to come out 1-3 in that 4 game stretch. Let Jackson start at New Orleans. Let him, it's going to be a rough time with Philly, Denver, Philly, San Francisco, but I mean, he's got to learn at some point, right? I would think that Jackson Dart starting sooner rather than later. Um, because if he starts week 15 and you get 3 or 4 games out of him, I mean, if the coaching staff hasn't already been fired, then they're going to get fired in the season. I think starting Jackson Dart sooner rather than later is only going to help the coaching staff keep their jobs. Um,
If he looks good enough. The one thing I'm afraid of, I think everybody in New York's afraid of it too, is if Jackson Dart is starting by week 5, what does that mean? Does that mean they're 0-4 or 1-4?
yeah,
So that's a really, that's a deep hole to dig out of. So then you're asking Jackson Dart, you're not just asking the team to be competitive, and then Jackson Dart come in late in the season because it's late in the season. It doesn't matter. At this point, you're asking Jackson Dart to be the whole reason that everybody keeps their jobs, and that's man. If you start off 1-4, and even if he's playing well, but he can't turn it into wins, if the Giants are at three or four wins at the end of the year, I think everybody's gone. Even if Jackson Dart does show some promise, I think they're all out the door. So to
yeah,
me, they're scrambling for wins. It's week by week for the Giants, I think. They are scratching and
yeah.
clawing for every play, every win. And I wouldn't even be surprised to see Brian Dable get really aggressive all year long, just trying to save their jobs. I mean, I really think it's that dire there in New York. If they can compete, though, and again, no matter who's at quarterback, whether it's Dart in week 5 or whatever, if they can compete and collect a handful of wins, 6, 7 wins, look competitive every week, I think everybody stays.
Now let's get to some of the good news, okay, for New York Giant fans, okay? The offense really isn't that bad on paper. On paper, Tyrone Tracy, a decent running back, had a good year last year. Cam Scattaboo, I I I had mixed feelings about coming out of this year. I think in the right system, he can be an effective guy. He reminds me more of an Austin Eckler type of guy, just by size, balance. He's not super athletic, but he can still run between tackles. He can still catch out of the backfield and all that other stuff. I'd be interested to see what he does in a Dable offense. Neighbors, Wandale Robinson, Darius Slayton. I mean, not bad weapons, right? Theo Johnson. You'd like to some more out of the tight end position, but still not terrible. I think there's enough here for whether it's Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart, whoever it is. There's enough here, along with Brian Dable, for not. I don't want to say no excuses, but it's harder to be like, oh well, I don't have anything. You have some stuff here. The cupboards aren't bare.
I agree. This is more than Daniel Jones typically had to work with. So I think that's right. I think there's enough here to work with, and I do like Brian Dable as an offensive coordinator kind of guy. I think he does a good job. I'll throw in the offensive line because we're doing 4 teams tonight. We need to
Right.
scoot here. So center, I assume John Michael Schmitz. I'm looking at Greg Van Roten at guard. I'm looking at Illuminor at right tackle. Of course, Andrew Thomas. Hopefully he's healthy, but he's brilliant at left tackle. And then maybe Evan Neal catches left guard, or maybe Runyon catches left guard. The offensive line worries me a lot, but with Thomas in there, I'm a lot less worried, typically, because you can always just put in a blocking tight end to help with stuff. So, assuming Andrew Thomas is healthy and brilliant at left tackle, and they're figuring out the blocking schemes, I think they'll be okay-ish on the offensive line. But I agree, there's enough here for ever who's at quarterback to not have any excuses about, well, there's just nobody to throw to. There are people to throw the football to. Theo Johnson at tight end is okay. He looks like he's climbing a little bit, so that's okay. And then you mentioned Neighbors is the key, right? He's the guy
Yeah.
who you hope continues to just be strong guy. And then you mentioned the running backs there, and a Slayton, the vert threat, having that vert threat. So you've got enough guys here to where you've got the vertical threat, you've got the underneath stuff, you should have some kind of a running game, and then you've got Neighbors who can be the consistent go to guy. So I don't think there's any excuses here against an average defense to not be able to put some points up. Again, I do think they may get tapped out against the top defenses, but that's not every week. I feel like they can produce enough to be competitive here.
I think the run game to that is the key here.
Yes.
Take as much pressure off that offensive line as possible because Russell, if Russ is playing the majority of the year, he's going to hold on to the ball way too long, eat up a lot of sacks, and that's not ideal. I like again, ideally for me, Dart gets in there sooner rather than later. Quick game stuff. That's only going to help him in his development.